So good morning. My name is Stephen Vogel. I'm an inspector, enforcement officer here for ADQ, working in the Drinking Water Inspection, Compliance, and Enforcement Unit. I've been with ADQ for 21 years. So we can go and let's move on. Unfortunately, I don't know how to move on. Why doesn't my screen want to work? Oh, here we go. Looks like I did have a little problem earlier with a delay, so maybe that's happening again, that I'm having connection issues. So during our routine drinking water inspection schedules, we do every 3 years for community systems, and then every 5 years for non-transient, non-community water systems, more like schools, mobile home parks, as this presentation is going to be about, and the transient non-community water systems are like gas stations, restaurants, people that only visit once a month or maybe even once a year. Yeah, okay, good, great. So seasonal transient systems. This is typically what they look like. Sometimes they're greener, other times they're more desolate, or they may only offer drinking water at a specific site. Here, as you can see, you can get 5 gallons for 50 cents at this one site. But we're going to go over our pre-inspection checklists on these systems. Not all of them are seasonal, but they do get inspected, so a pre-inspection checklist is always sent out to a system. So you got summer homes. They can also be seasonal, to where residents live during the summertime or even during the wintertime in an area for less than 6 months, and they move back to their normal communities or homes in other states and even Canada. So camping sites are under this. Roadside rest areas like ADOT, rest stops on I-40 to I-10, they get inspected every year. Every 5 years. So as we schedule drinking water inspections, 15 days before announced inspection, we contact the system. It's either going to be the administrative contact, which is our first point, and if the administrative contact does say the designated operator will be the one running point, then we get a hold of him. Occasionally, we'll find the designated operator is also the administrative contact. So just one contact. We always like to have 2 emails, one from the owner. So be sure to indicate to the inspector if you are a seasonal system and you may not even be open when we're calling. We don't know everything. We don't look closely at systems. We just get a sign and we'll look at them and try to give a call and see when we can set it up. If that's the case, we put a little note in saying that next quarter or in the summer we'll be out. Unless you close during the summer, then it'd be the winter that will be out. If the system is currently open, then of course we're going to schedule the inspection within 15 days, or we would also like to know when you're available. So if that week is not working, we may just schedule it for the next week. You might not get 15 days, but we'll work with you. We don't want to send it out over a month unless you are not open, then we will. So attached to the email after the phone call will be this pre-inspection checklist. And of course, we will also send this to the CAC, or copy them, to the CAC, so they can let us know whether or not your monitoring and reporting is a non-violation or non-issue. This is a seasonal startup form. I believe it's just 2 pages. We send this out, or the CAC will send it out, and you go through this seasonal startup procedure. You might already have one written down in a book, and that's fine, but you will have to submit this. And we'll talk more about this in the next presentation with Jennifer Crow. We'll go over the seasonal startup paperwork for that. I believe this is the last page of this, and it talks about your seasonal sampling for your revised total COLI form, and then you will continue monthly after that, and hopefully no having to do resampling, which costs the system a little bit more money. So we're going to prepare for that. This is what ADQ's pre-inspection check looks like. Currently, it's 2 pages. So on the left side is the first page, and on the right side is our second page. And we'll look at this pre-inspection checklist a little closely here in the next slides. Top portion of the first page of our pre-inspection checklist goes over what would be a violation. So the public water system entered his name, their system ID number, their operator, the certification number, the grade of that operator. If it's a treatment system that runs with treatment, removing arsenic or something, or nitrates, then he should be a treatment operator, at least 1 or above. And then we're asking for the expiration date. Name and title of the person that's completing this form. Could be the operator, could be a maintenance man. We don't require who does it. They don't have to be qualified. They just need to know how to follow the form. So we look at it. Of course, all systems are going to have a revised total coliform rule to provide samples for. This pre-inspection checklist is for communities. We do have 2 other checklists for non-transient and an additional one for transient systems. So things are going to be a little different. However, this one holds all the information for every one of them. So we're going to go over the community system. So as a community, you'll have a lead and copper monitoring plan. You'll also have one if you are a non-transient system. You'll have a lead and copper monitoring plan. Stage 2 disinfectant goes for both those systems also if you are using a disinfectant byproduct. If you're using UV lighting, then it is something else. You don't need to worry about disinfectant byproducts with UVA lighting. Emergency operation plan only pertains to the community water system. And we would like to see that plan prior to the inspection. It helps the inspection go a little quicker. Time is money. So if we use up your whole day looking at things and reviewing paperwork, it will take up most of the time. So if we're able to see this type of paperwork prior to moving on or showing up for the inspection, it's much quicker. We just need to look at the components. We also want to be aware of your backflow prevention plan. We'll ask questions about it, and they're required to be tested every year. So that's why annual backflow prevention assembly testing records should be on file. We won't request them through an email. We want to see them there. And we'll talk about it. We'll ask, who does your testing? Is it in-house? Are they qualified? Are they certified? And then, of course, ATCs, which is approval to construct, and AOC, approval of construction. We will want to see that paperwork that you had any type of components added in the last 5 years. You need to retain records of water quality analysis, records of turbidity on record for or on site for surface water or duty systems. The lower part of the pre-inspection checklist is the physical walkthrough of your system. This is important. The inspector is going to go through this as well. And if you've already filled this out and checked yes or no and present it to the inspector, it won't stop him from going, or her, from going on with the inspection and looking through it also. So you want to look to make sure your well slabs are in good condition. Got any small cracks around the casing, you can seal them with a product that you can buy, bath and tub tile, regrouting, silicone, anything. Since it does not involve the water, we don't need to see that it's NSF approved or ANSI. A raw water sample tap is important so that if you do have a total coliform hit, you can go back to your well, take a sample there, send it to the lab with the other repeat samples, just to prove that the well is not the issue. If it is the issue, then you're going to be disinfecting your well until it becomes a negative for total colic harms. We look for air vents. They must be 2 feet above the slab and have a number 16 non-corrodable mesh screen attached to the end or somewhere in there. All openings in the well casings are sealed. Sample taps for the entry point are labeled. If you're using chemicals, they should have an NSF or an ANSI standard 60, and we would like to see a label. So if you're using your chemicals and you're pouring it into a larger container, you can always take that label off the smaller container, put it on that larger container, or even on the wall to show the inspector that it is an approved chemical being used. We'll go on to storage tanks. We're going to be looking at the overflow pipes. They must come all the way down to about a foot from the ground or 2. You can have 24 inches and protected with either you have a flapper with a rubber seal on it or you have the non-corrodable mesh screen, the number 16, of course. We're going to ask for photos of the hatch locked gasket. Gasket could be a round or a gasket could be square. However, if you do have an inspection lid that has 18 bolts bolted down, so it's something that you don't usually open up often, we're going to look for a rubber piece or a seal around that also. And a photo is a good way to show it to us so we don't have to find tanks. We don't carry any safety harness or gear with us. We're going to want a photo of the air vent that is up there, and we want to see mostly all the way around, so them take more than one photo to show us this screen. We want to make sure that it's intact and that it is the correct size. It could be smaller screen. It doesn't have to be the number 16, but it definitely cannot be larger. We're also going to look at whether or not you're maintaining vegetation around your system, all the components. We don't want to be weeding through a bunch of weeds just to get to a well site or to get to the tanks. The area around the storage tank must be graded to where when it rains and water comes off the tank, all that storm water will funnel away from and out of the area and not sit there and lie up against the tank. And I have pictures, and we'll show you what a bad one looks like compared to a good one. If you have a hydrochromatic tank, you're going to need a working pressure gauge there. We're going to look for gauges at other areas too, because we want to make sure your system is pressurized above 20 psi. I like to see 35 or greater, but no more than 100 psi when I'm looking at things. Also on this hydro tank, you'll have a relief valve so that if it gets overpressurized, and it needs to be above the water line so you're not losing product. Another thing we look at is a sight gauge. However, in freezing areas, we won't require you to replace it if it froze and broke off, because you lose a lot of your product by the time you realize that that cracked and broke. You get to it, a lot of your water could have already escaped under the ground, and you're not going to get money back for that, especially if it's treated. If you're treating your water, you don't want to see it pouring out onto the ground, nobody paying for it. On the back side of our pre-inspection checklist, we'll have questions. If you check no to some of the items on the first page, we're going to want to know, did you address this situation? Did you correct it? And if you did not, please let us know why. What is it? Was the well slab so badly deteriorated that you're going to need a month or two to get cement in there to pour a new slab? That's okay. We'll give you opportunity to correct that, and maybe up to 90 days, depending on the weather situation. We don't want you pouring cement during a snowstorm or some other emergency that might be going on. You have other things that might need to be taken care of. So we're going to ask you questions about any of these forms here towards the bottom, lead and copper. You have an MSSP for 1,000 or 1,000 or more, emergency operation plan, or an ADQ operation and maintenance manual. All these, as long as you have it on a computer and not printed out, you can take your mouse You can click on these and it'll take you to the site to where you can download the lead and copper plan, MSSP. You can get the emergency operation plan template out of ADQ, follow that. Very simple and easy to use. And it covers everything that we look for as an inspector for your EOPs. And we like to see that plan prior to the inspection. So if we find things that might be irregular or changed, we can just mention it at the inspection or send you an email saying you must update this part of the plan. It's not a violation. The violation is you don't have one. If you have one, it just needs to be corrected or updated. We'll give you time, usually 7 days if it's a important item, or a month if you need to figure out who's going to replace your bottled water delivery system if that's no longer part of your plan. They could have went out of business. So at the bottom of the pre-inspection checklist and the final portion of it is where we're going to have some pictures of don't get caught with some of these violations. And one of them is not having a sample plan for back teeth. Others are just vegetation overgrowth. You don't have an emergency operation plan as a violation. You haven't tested your backflow prevention assembly, or retaining the records. You might just have the latest one. Well, we're going to know. Have you been testing it before, or is it just time for an inspection? We'll make sure we get tested. All right? And then operation and maintenance. So if you have any type of arsenic treatment or removal of any other contaminants, we want to make sure you have a manual for that. A lot of times you can go online if you have lost your manual that came in with your product to show what is the maintenance for this. Is it every year you must switch something out, or is it every 5 years after an inspection? So down here, we changed these photos. In the past, our photos were things that looked bad. So some of these systems said, well, it wasn't as bad as what the photo looked, so we thought we were okay. So we kind of changed it around. We're always evolving here. So we put in good photos. If it doesn't look this good, then maybe you'll want to fix it to look this good. So the very first picture up there on the top left are two examples of overflows. One has a screen, and the one above it has a flapper. I don't like the one with the screen. It is too low to the ground. So as an inspector, I would ask it to be as high as the other one that you can see right across from it. But it is not really a violation. We're just going to ask you to raise it up and put the screen back on it. And then we have photos of tank here that has the vegetation removed from it, what the wells should look like, with the proper air vent and sample tap. The next photo is at the very bottom there is a storage tank foundation that looks clean and exposed. That means the lower lip can be dried and not underneath any type of soil retaining the moisture, which could cause some rusting going on. You may never see that it's leaking until you remove the foot of soil away from it. We have a picture of a gasket on the storage tank lid that looks like it's in very good condition. We have an EPDS, entry point to the distribution system, tagged and labeled in the proper location. And then the very last photo there is the release valve for a hydrochromatic tank. And that's very important so that the tank doesn't get overpressurized and air is released and not water. So it's above the water line. As you can see, it's on top. Here, we're going to look at a few photos of good versus bad slabs. The photo, of course, on the left is a very good slab of a well. You can see that it looks a little higher than a foot above the slab, and then you have the air vent up and turns down. Someone built this. So the nipple on the end there looks like about a 6-inch. Doesn't have to be there. It just makes it closer to the slab, and we want it 2 feet above. It is not in violation. It is exactly 2 feet above. So they took it for datum saying it is at 2 feet. Don't complain. Of course, the picture on the left, it looks like the slab was poured above ground. which causes it to break if heavy equipment is placed on it. This, I assume a truck ran over the corner of it, so the inspector is going to ask you to protect this site from vehicles driving by. As you can see, it just broke the whole piece of the corner off, and now a new cement slab will need to be poured. Time is going to be taken and money spent. I'm going to try to avoid that. Here's a couple more of a bad versus good slab. On the left, this one has the cracks falling up to the casing. So you want to regrout it. You want to seal it with maybe some silicone, whatever it takes to seal it before the inspection. Don't allow the inspector to call it out first, because it just becomes a violation. And we're trying to avoid that. We want you guys to be in compliance prior to our inspection. So here on the right side, you can see everything's there. You got a cane-to-cane air vent. Those screens are just inside, maybe an eighth of an inch up. The screen is there, and it comes with it. So we'll feel to make sure that it is still in good condition and we can't break it. We don't push hard enough on it to break it, but a slight touch on it breaks it, then we know it was rotting out or eroding away. This one has a sample tap. Everything's sealed up there that needs to be sealed, and no electrical out conduit exposed. And my computer's slowing down. All right, here we go. Vegetation overgrowth. We don't want to walk up to your well and have to fight to get to it. And I took this photo myself, so I know what it took to get to it. And it's a good thing I was wearing pants. Well, we're going to wear pants. We're going to wear shorts when we come up for an inspection anyways. But inside this fence line wasn't any better. So this is going to cause insects to hang out. And then whatever feeds off those insects to come after them. And then whatever feeds off of those, they're going to come after them. So it just warps into a bad situation to where you have animal life hanging out, from birds to coyotes, because vegetation, they can hide in it and they feed within it. There's a photo of a tank. The tree is not on their property, so they don't think it's their responsibility to trim it. But if it is touching your tank, we believe it's your responsibility to reach over or to get outside there and cut those branches away. It is a source of contamination to your tank where insects, other things can crawl up and have a line of sight up to your vent. Of course, inside the fence line, you still have vegetation that needs to be removed. You want to expose that ring and the lip of the tank so it stays dry during weather. And this is what it looks like. This is a different tank. You can see they were asked to grade this and to clean out the inside of that ring with the soil. The soil was up above the lip of that tank, as you can see where they painted up to, and how it got even worse as it goes around the corner of how much soil was up against that tank. The lip is always a requirement for us to see, because we want to see that it's dry, it's not holding moisture where it can start rusting. This is a tank. It costs money to disassemble it, remove it, and bring a new one in. So you want your tank to last forever, then treat it like you want it there forever. Now we're going to look at a soil run-on to a system well that they thought was just fine because, hey, that casing's way up. Well, we cleaned away the dirt down there to check the slab, and we can see that it has a hole next to the casing where the water runs on into this rock area that is protecting it, but now it's holding water until it either drains through that hole or evaporates with the sun and heat. So this is called out, saying that we need the slab to be up higher and the area graded so the stormwater that rushes in moves around it. So they agreed. So they built this small little cinder block. Looks like it's only going to be about a foot to a foot and a half, but that's all they needed. Also raising the casing. As you can see, casing had a, not the casing, raising the slab. As you can see, around the casing there was a hole, so they needed to put in another 3 inches of cement. Took some time and some labor, but it got done. And a taper was done because it's still going to rain. If the rain runs sideways, it's going to put water in there. We want that water to come out. We don't want it to sit there inside again and do the same thing. Prevent a hole from causing water to run down the casing. So they did a very good job. And here's the before and after photos. As you can see, they did have an awning over it the whole time, but it didn't prevent the storm water from coming on there and ruining their cement slab. Much nicer look now. I'm not sure what the other 2 pieces are. There might have been other electrical outlets that came up there, or it might have been a sounding tube. Either way, they're capped and sealed, so we don't worry about it. Now we'll look at some seasonal transit systems prior to you starting up. Understand most of you guys are already in and moving along. Your winter visitors are already starting to show up. So let's look what you should be doing prior to the park becoming full occupied. A lot of times these RV systems might have 1 or 2 residents year-round, be a maintenance person, or it could be the manager on site. So this is a winter area. During the summertime, nobody's there. They may drain it, they may leave it pressurized, as this one is pressurized, because someone was there on the property, which was the manager. However, they just go throughout their business in the summertime, never checking on this. We open up the doors and look inside, saying plenty of dust storms came through this area. We have grass growing on inside. So you don't want it to look like this. You could literally short out your system and then have an electrician come in here to have it fixed, rewired, and of course it'll cost you money again. A few more pictures of idle systems. This one here, you could get a back T positive just from looking at the picture on the right side. It just does not look good. The residents there, which were just a few, so they did not have to sample, or the operator didn't even visit. This kind of stuff was leaking. It was summertime. It dried it up, so it never pooled any water. So no one even noticed there was, something leaking, since there's no evidence. But as an inspector, I'm going to ask for that to be cleaned up, maybe taken apart, and then put back together, hopefully with some Teflon tape maybe to help it seal. However, you might want to just replace all the components there. And these are plastic piping that I can recall, so very easy to cut out and stick a new sensor in there for your well to click on and off with. Flushing your system. So you may not have a huge storage tank like you see here. However, flushing the storage tank isn't the only thing that needs to be done. You need to follow up by going to the end of your lines. If you have plenty of dead end lines, then start running them out, getting that line cleared, especially if it was not pressurized. Then you want to remove the air in the line too. Run your EPDS, where you can see it's tagged there as 1. Run it for a while before taking a sample. This is not where you take a back T sample, so you're just going to be taking your annual samples, whatever they are for this system. So go through your system after you pressurize it. You're going to be looking for leaks. Here's one that's leaking, been leaking for a while, it looks like. A little closer picture up on the right side shows where the water is running down. So it's leaking underneath the connection, running down to the ground. Again, it's 115 degrees out. Very hard to see this leak unless you walk up to it, since it's not going to show a big puddle. It's going to get evaporated as it leaks. It leaks slowly, evaporates rapidly. But vegetation is a big site. You see a lot of grass growing around an area that you know you have a water line, go check it out. You're not there irrigating, you're there for a customer. This one here is very hard to see, this tap. here that was leaking, and it is leaking around the handle to the spigot. One, the spigot is sitting on the ground. It's not up a few inches. We like to see a whole foot up off the ground. Picture on the right, it's leaking also. However, I thought it was leaking at the connection for the hose bib. It is leaking at the sewer. Up there, that line is cracked underneath that dirt. Someone buried it so that they didn't have to see it, but yet it seeps out, as you can see. And if you've taken a sample there, which I wouldn't recommend it, no sample should be taken next to the ground like that. This should not be a sample location for back T program. Another one where they have the water spigot next to an open sewer line. Where's the cap? And I don't see it in the photo. So did the last person using it lost the cap, took the cap with them? We don't know. It's a responsibility to RV park to have extra caps to be placed back on there, because the person that's using this water spigot here has an open sewer line next to it. Might not be a healthy place. Picture on the right, kind of same way there, low to the ground. Someone hooked up their hose right there next to the port for the septic system. This is what it should be. You got it off the ground a whole foot. I would use the sample tap on the left picture towards the right. It's away from the sewer line. The picture on the right, that has an open sewer line there. However, they're sampling on the tap that we can't really see on that T. However, I took the picture because that is a broken sewer line. The cap cannot go back on. They were going to have to replace that and then get the cap to screw back on. So something broke it. It could have been a heavy piece of equipment, could have been the trailer itself. We just know it's broken and should be replaced. Now, you want to protect your system from all your customers showing up? They have older models. They have newer models, RVs or fifth wheelers. However, they do have a backflow device on it to protect them. So you're going to want to have a vacuum hose breaker on your spigots. They are very inexpensive. However, if you do have 100 to 300 spaces, of course, that's going to cost you a pretty penny to buy one for each one. So I recommend the one that has the locking screw on it. This way, when they unscrew their hose, the whole thing doesn't come off and they leave with your vacuum hose breaker. However, there's so many different types out there, and there's some cheap ones that you can put on. You just risk the chance of losing it or someone removing it, and they might not even know it. They could have had somebody else take their hose off, and when it came off, they believed that it was with the hose. So not knowing that it is actually supposed to stay on the spigot itself. So think about buying those. We're going to go over a little bit of ACAOC, since maybe you replace some components in your system over the summertime or over the winter time. Whichever seasonal system you are, you'll be shut down. You may put in a new booster pump. You may service your well and put in a new well pump. Well, if you do, if it's for like you put in a 7-gallon per minute pump and you stuck in a 7-gallon per minute pump, there's no need. However, if you changed it, say, you wanted more capacity, you wanted more production out of your well, so you put in a bigger one, or you put it in a tank because you wanted your well to rest a little bit from the customers, and you're going to use tank water during the day, and at night your well will fill up your tanks. Well, if they're not known by ADQ, then you need to get approval to construct, and inspectors can help you with that paperwork, but it will be a violation if we find that you did not do the paperwork. So you can always call your CAC, your Compliance Assistant Coordinator for your county, and ask for an engineer. And engineers will help you. ADQ engineers want you to pass inspections. They want you to be in compliance. So they'll help you with the paperwork, and they will coach you in to the proper signatures, the proper stamping from the engineer that put it together for you, and they'll sign up. A lot of the times, there's no fee unless you're trying to put in a treatment. Let's say that you got tired of your hard water, so you're going to stick in a softener. But that is a reviewable fee for ADQ, so you will have the proper fee sent in with your application and your drawings. They can tell you what it will be, and they can also let you know whether or not it won't be a fee. And with the approval of constructions, there's never a fee. It's just showing us that you did build it the way you got approved to construct. So here's the approval to construct. Changes, upgrades made. We'll just read it out here. Systems must submit the ATC application for if you're a new public drinking water system, you modify an existing facility, you make an alteration that will affect the treatment capacity, water quality, flow, the distribution, or the operational performance. So you have to look at all of that in order to put in your ATC. Always put in an ATC, in my view. You can always call in, ask whether or not this is going to be a reviewable fee or will it have no review fee. Very simple to do. And then the system will receive their ATC approval letter for beginning their project. A lot of times they've already started their project. They don't wait for the ATC. So if it's not approved, please look at it and find out what the engineer is asking to be changed. All right? So here's your approval of construction. No fees are associated. It satisfies any deficiency requested from the department. So post-construction review. The system shall collect their initial monitoring samples if you're a new system, of course. And if you are a seasonal system, you will collect your initial monitoring samples before starting up. During the system's sanitary survey inspection, water system must provide this paperwork. A lot of times the inspector will find this paperwork if they look for it and if it's available to see, and if they're aware that a new component, or this is a new system, of course, is there, they might bring this information with them so they can say, okay, you have the paperwork here, do you need a copy of it? Sometimes they get lost, or maybe they just didn't see it, or you didn't see it important enough to keep. But it is very important to keep all your approval to construct and approval of construction. So we're at the end of the presentation, and I have 10 minutes for questions and answering if I can, and if not, maybe someone else can chime in with an answer to your question. So, Vivian, if we have any questions, I'm ready to hear them.
Hi, Steve. Thanks for that presentation. Right now, we do not have any new questions,